Welcome, DevOps Paradox listeners. My name is Darren Pope. I am here with, if I can get him in there, there's Victor. Oh, Victor, you're muted too, so let me unmute you. Now let's try it. No, it's me. Okay.
And this is me.
Okay.
My name is Victor.
Here we go. It's one of those days already. And it's only 7 a.m. where I am. So thanks for joining us today for this special live episode of DevOps Paradox. We're titling it today, Continue Building Your Kubernetes Skills Using Remote Learning During the COVID-19 Crisis. And we've got a friend with us. I'm going to bring him into the studio as well. His name is Mislav. And Mislav, that's weird. Why do I not see you? Mislav, can you talk for a second?
Hi, everybody. I'm Mislav. I can see myself on the camera.
Yep, but your video froze coming to me. So
Okay.
Let me see if I can bump that. Here, I'm going to kick you out and then you rejoin.
Okay.
All right, so I'll watch for you to come in. We'll talk. Okay, booting you now. Sort of. Let's see. Here we go. Okay. So Mislav will be back in just a second. Like I said, we warned you that this was live. So if you were here watching, you knew things would happen. This will not be edited.
It's not about being live, it's doing it for the first time. We are bound to fail.
Yeah, and that's okay. It's like software, right? We release software and we're bound to fail.
Exactly.
We would hope not.
Pre-alpha.
This is pre-alpha. Okay, anyway. Oh, there's Mislav. He's back in. All right, let me bring him back in. And there he is.
Hello.
Hey, there you go. Center yourself up there a little bit. Okay. So Mislav is the CTO of Magic Sandbox. Actually, is there a more official name for that? Or is Magic
No, we're
Sandbox?
Magic Sandbox. We're at msb.com. So, yeah. Magic
MSB.
Sandbox.
So tell us what Magic Sandbox is.
Magic Sandbox currently is an immersive hands-on training platform for Kubernetes, but the idea behind Magic Sandbox is much bigger, and I hope we get some time to talk about it.
Yeah, we'll save that to the end. Because that feels a little more pitchy, right? That's okay. But we can always talk about cool stuff. Now, you're the CTO. You're also the developer of it.
One of the developers
One of the
by now,
developers.
obviously, but yeah, when we started almost 2 years ago, it was just me and my co-founder.
2 years old. Okay.
Yeah, something like that.
So walk us through what it's for learning Kubernetes. But what does it set apart? I mean, I can spin up a GKE cluster super simple and just start doing stuff. Why would I want to use Magic Sandbox to learn?
Yeah, this comes into a bit broader picture of what we're trying to do. Maybe if I set some context, it would be more clear. So basically, the idea behind Magic Sandbox is that before I was the kind of founder, I was just a developer in a lot of companies, and I had to job hop a lot to get the necessary experience to continue growing. And the idea behind Magic Sandbox is simple. It's basically the infrastructure is so cheap right now that we can just provide whole clusters for you to play around with. And not only that, the browsers are powerful enough that we can build these custom learning experiences for teaching these technologies. So what we're trying to do is build an environment strictly for learning Kubernetes that's tailored to it. So there's a large visual layer that explains everything that's going on. But also, it's not only about spinning up a cluster and messing around with it. The point of education, and this is what we're learning more and more now, and learning tools, is not to just dump on you, here's a load balancer service, this is how you're using it. It's to provide more context, and the content itself has to be engaging and relevant to what you're doing. So the idea behind MSB is to not only provide the tooling for that, but to provide a nice learning path for you. Once you need something, you can just jump into it.
Cool. Well, talking about jumping into it, do you want to share your screen and like walk us through? And why not? I mean,
yeah, why not? It was supposed to be at the end, but
end. Come on, we flip everything around here.
Yeah. I'm bad at
we test in production, so it's
you should see our backend. Share screen just a sec.
Yep. And then I'm going to add that in. And then I am actually going to remove, whoops, how do I do this? I want to see if I can bump. Okay, so there's you solo. And then, which you're a good looking man. This thing, okay, here we go. All right, we'll just all three stay up there. Okay. So what do we have here?
So what we have now is our library view. So we are focusing on several different things. One is the library, one are the workshops. We can talk about it later. I don't want to sound super pitchy because I am a developer and I think this is very cool. But basically, let's just walk quickly through it. And I'm going to try to describe what I'm doing because this will be in the podcast format also, right? So here we have content that we are covering. It's being developed by Nigel Poulton, the author of the Kubernetes book. So basically, once we jump into a lesson, we get immediately connected to a full cluster. And what's cool about MSB and what I'm most excited is this visual layer. So the idea is to keep the tooling as close as possible to the real world. I mean, it is a real world environment, basically, but also provide you this kind of guided experience of this kind of live diagram to see what exactly is happening in the system. So the problem with Kubernetes specifically, and what I went through both as going through a Kubernetes transition and trying to push it, is that suddenly you're thrown into a lot of jargon that's you have no idea what a replica set is and what things are there. So basically the idea is behind Magic Sandbox is that there's a lot of tasks that you are going through and a lot of interactive content that's kind of tailored to Kubernetes. But the cool part, what I think is, let's say if we were, I'm just going to show a quick example. Usually when you're trying to explain what a rolling update is, it's fairly tricky. But if we have a look here and just do kubectl, let's just do a quick rolling update. I'm just going to do a nonsensical.
Everything in Kubernetes is nonsensical.
I don't think so. I think it's awesome. We can talk about it, but just a quick rolling update, and suddenly you see, okay, here's a deployment that has a replica set, another replica set is spawned up. There's a strategy through which you do a rolling update, and suddenly it makes much more sense. And we found this to be a very good learning tool to explain these concepts. And there's a lot going on there. Basically, you can always dig deeper into the system and see, this is the current state of the system. This is how the system responds to it. There's a lot of things there that you're usually not interacting with, but you can always look at what's happening. So this is just one view that we've developed. There's other views like this node view and a live traffic view to see exactly how, let's say, blue-green deployments work and things like that. But the idea is to provide you this learning environment. And what we're focusing on now is more on the content and how exactly the content should be delivered. Because as I said, it's not enough just to dump you into an environment and say, this is what a rolling update is. It has to be put in a context. So currently, as I said, I'm just going to open up. We have a full kind of IDE deployed on the environment, so you can practice all these things. And we're pushing now CI/CD servers into the system, so you can practice the whole development stack. And what we're focusing on mostly now is how to deliver content as efficiently and engaging as possible. We don't want to, let's say, gamify it like some are doing, and it's a good approach, but we're still figuring it out in a lot of ways. So I don't know if I should talk more, but I think you get the general idea of what MSB is and how it works.
Yeah. So, I don't like that view. Let's see if we can get a better view. Forget it for now. I'll just stay large. I'm already large.
Stay large.
It's still morning for me. I had a question and I started thinking large. Doesn't matter. So you were, go ahead, Victor. You got an idea.
I mean, what to me makes that very interesting compared to others is that this one is less generic than others I've seen, right? I've seen quite a few learning platforms that are interactive and you get a cluster, you get things set up, right? But they're very generic, which is probably good idea for business because you can scale a lot, right? And this is very kind of like more specific in a way, with a better result for that specific subject, right?
Yeah, this is exactly the pitch. I mean, we went through the whole fundraising process, and this was a very hard thing to explain to investors because we always said we would like there to be, Elasticsearch, Postgres, things like that. We want there to be a 5 terabyte Elasticsearch cluster, and as you're changing the sharding strategies, you can see the data moving through your cluster. And their biggest concern was, okay, if you build this environment and invest all these resources, how easy it is to transition to other technologies, and our answer would be like, it's very hard. So yeah, exactly what you said, but I think it's what makes us unique, and it's an environment we would like to build that if you want to learn our technology, we are the best platform to do it, but not only from a Gizmo interactivity way of view, but from the content delivery, from the types of things that you learn there. And this is our goal. And exactly not as generic as the rest. We are specifically, everything here is built for Kubernetes currently and the DevOps processes in general.
So in doing that, so you spent 2 years building this. Did you have a prototype of it before? Let's go through a little bit of the history and the pain of, because if it's 2 years, that means you started with what, Kubernetes 10?
Something like that. I mean, I can talk a lot, obviously, about this process. So we went through this startup incubator called Entrepreneur First. And basically, you come there as not with an idea, you come there as an individual, and you basically have to pitch. You have to make a case, you get an initial investment, and then there's this whole demo day where you pitch to a lot of other investors. So while we are like 2 years old, like 7-8 months of it went to just fundraising. The initial prototype was built by me by basically not sleeping for a month and a half. We did a Hacker News launch. Everything crashed in like 6 seconds. We went to the first spot. And so we thought we already made some revenue. We had calls from, let's say, one of the big 5 companies. We thought the space was cool. We thought like fundraising is going to be, super easy. It turns out it was 8 months long process. So we, like in this current configuration, like we started off as a hacky prototype on DigitalOcean to this now technological monstrosity we have now with a massive Kubernetes cluster spinning up smaller Kubernetes clusters on demand with pools of master and worker nodes. Yeah, it's been a year since we got Nigel on board and building it out in this configuration.
So you said you picked up Nigel for content. Right. So what made you talk to Nigel and was like, hey, do you want to work with us on content?
I mean, he is the author of the Kubernetes book. The bigger question is, why would he want to talk to us? This was the harder problem. So it took months of convincing him because he gets these pitches all the time. I remember one evening I was in a bar with a beer and he had a list of questions and I went through all of them and like answered them, tried to get them as precise as possible. What really got him hooked is when he finally decided to try out the platform, and it was a much shittier situation than this. And then he was like, oh, okay, this is actually different. This is amazing. Let's do this. So yeah.
And then he was in.
Then he was in, and yeah, it's been great so far. We did a KubeCon workshop with him. He's been developing content with us now, and he's an awesome guy.
He is.
Is that it, Victor? I mean, I've been talking.
No, I mean, he is. Yeah. Nigel is really cool guy.
Just.
I was surprised though that I've seen him in KubeCon because he hates flying.
Yeah.
But other than that, he's a really cool guy.
He's really trying. I mean, he likes the community around Kubernetes. He's really trying to make it as better as much as possible. And the workshop he did there is literally a one-on-one workshop to try to get as many people to get involved and see how Kubernetes cool is. So yeah, I guess advocacy is stronger than his hate of flying.
So if somebody was to sit down with MSB today, Magic Sandbox, in case you're just dropping in or hearing this clip out of context. Where should they start? I mean, do they just basically open up Nigel's book and go? I mean, they could have Nigel's book or not, but they don't need it.
Oh, no.
So I mean, everything's just there, right? So what's the learning path like?
So the learning path is, maybe I can share my screen again just to show.
Here it comes. If I can get it back to there, and it's there.
So this is the content that's been published so far. So you get it from like intro to Kubernetes and MSB. Let's show you what Kubernetes is, trying to introduce you to controllers a bit, things like that. Here's how you work with YAML. Here's what a pod is. So this is the learning path. And this is actually the trickiest part to figure out about, let's say, edtech and education in general, is how to present these things in a way that's kind of useful. What I found, I've been developing the initial content in the early prototypes. It's a very tricky thing because in our head, once you're an experienced developer, you're there for like 5, 6, 7 years. You're not even aware of the amount of knowledge that you have. And suddenly you're throwing out concepts. Yeah, you're just going to SSH into a machine and this is going to happen and the environment variables are going to be set. And as you try to explain some of these concepts, you see that there's always like a more and more branching tree out there of concepts that you should know before. So the learning path we have now is, so we have now several stages on which we're operating. This is a kind of reference library where you go through and get introduced to concepts themselves. But now what we're doing a lot is doing a series of hands-on kind of internal DevOps bootcamps and workshops inside companies where we're transitioning whole teams, teaching them about Kubernetes by building real e-commerce systems and things like that. And we're using that learning now to try and put it into the platform and automate it. And this requires a bit of a change in mindset, because I think I made a mistake of going into this as an engineer, like here's a lot of content. But what we're seeing is that kind of project-based learning is very important. So you have to have a goal in mind. I'm going to build an e-commerce store, and not like I'm going to learn about session affinity in Kubernetes. So we're taking this approach right now of trying to fit it into a wider context. And what we're actually also finding a lot now is, and it kind of makes sense when you say it, is that people and companies, they don't care that much about Kubernetes. They care about optimizing their speed of delivery, So this is why we're now pushing a real kind of CI/CD system in there. We just push the IDE in. So we're trying to get this whole concept of Dockerizing your application, pushing it to a registry, triggering a CI/CD pipeline, and then seeing it happen on the system. So this is by far now the hardest part. I mean, from a business perspective, there's a lot of hard parts from marketing and things like that. But from a learning perspective, we're trying to figure out, we're using this knowledge from working with companies and then trying to automate this process here.
Okay, you've said two things in there. Number one, you shouldn't have approached it as an engineer, right? But that's what we do, right? We're engineers.
Yeah.
So that's how we approach it. So we don't know any different. And then towards the end there, you said we have these other hard things like marketing and other things. Mm-hmm. Marketing is infinitely harder than writing code.
This is what I'm realizing more and more. Yeah.
Yes.
But it's been interesting. Like I care about this a lot. I can talk about this problem from like a human perspective, from a business perspective, from a content perspective. Yeah, it's a very interesting problem. So,
what is your favorite part as you've been working on this for a couple of years? What's your favorite part? Is it the content? Is it the tech now? Was the tech cool and now it's gotten boring?
I mean, the tech is cool. It's very nice to now have a team where, I can draw stuff on a napkin and say, go deal with this. So I'm not coding as much anymore. My favorite part now is actually delivering these workshops and teaching. So we get like 20 people in the classroom, everybody gets their own cluster, and we have specific content for that. And this has been my favorite part right now, just to interact with a lot of people, answer their questions. And the weird part is, as with everything, you're getting better and better in it, and you can anticipate all the questions that are going to happen. So every time I'm optimizing how it happens. So just working with people has been my favorite so far.
So if we flip back over to the full screen here for just a second, and it's hard for me to see because it's too small. You were talking about being project based. When you were talking to people, what was sort of that twist that caused it to go ahead and go in that direction?
I mean, I was just listening to your previous episode. The technology is not the problem, you are, something like that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just been thinking about education. Like, why do people learn? Like a person, like there's been a lot of, let's say, CKA and CKAD certification courses. Yeah. And if you think about it, when people learn, they are not learning to just know Kubernetes. You have to give them a goal. I'm going to prepare you for the CKAD so you can get a better job. So this is the kind of messaging that needs to be there. But also, when I was just thinking about how I learn things, like it needs to be in a real world. It needs to be something that you can fit into a bigger context, but it also needs to be something that you need kind of right now. So I remember, like, there's a lot of great content out there about learning Scala, and I personally, don't care about it right now. It's just been thinking a lot about how people learn, and especially interacting with people in the workshops and seeing how effective that is and how much more engaging that is than learning, than just going through, okay, this is a load balancer service, right? But I think it's an order of magnitude bigger effort to build than what we have right now on the platform.
But that's kind of the thing I believe that many are missing. That there is no very often there are no objectives and there is no story, right? Like, for example, and don't take this as a complaint, right? I see over there deployments. While in my head, for a normal person, it would make much more sense if it would be, let's say, making your applications scalable, right? Because that's what deployments do. And that goes back to what you said before when we say to non-technical people, and then you just SSH into machine, right? Yeah. Nobody knows what that is. Okay. So if you kind of build it around those stories, objectives, let's make your application accessible from outside of a cluster. That means something. And when people say, we're going to create Ingress, what the heck is Ingress? If I know what's Ingress, I wouldn't be there.
It's actually, there's now two things that maybe are interesting, but it's actually tricky because we've developed a few classes of this kind of, let's deploy Nginx, let's deploy a database, let's deploy these things. But it's very hard, to just kind of randomly talk about these concepts without like, you can't just, okay, let's do this and then pause it for like 10 pages. Let's actually explain these mechanisms. So I think both are necessary. Like, the library that we are building now is a good reference for then. If people go into the project-based learning, then we can quickly shift them here. Okay, if you're not very familiar with this, then just go to the reference system and then get back to this. It's a very tricky problem. The other side is also what we're finding in the market, and I really don't want to make it sound like I'm criticizing somebody. There's always a bunch of kind of self-learners, and but in a specific technology, right? There are people who are going to learn Kubernetes even without MSB, like they are the ones reading Medium blogs and things like that. And the rest just want to continue with their job, which I'm not saying they're lazy. It's just that they are probably focusing on their own thing. They're a C# developer and they care about something there, right? So the trick with kind of edtech and startups like this is to try to cater to these other 80% that they're not there to play around. They're here to learn something specifically that they need so they can accomplish some other objective. And what we're finding is that it's actually a much broader problem than we thought. Like, even if we give all this content, if we had everything there, that doesn't mean that people are going to engage with this. So when we are doing the workshops in companies, what the companies actually want is that all their people are in the classroom and paying attention to it and going through the system, and they know that they are going to get familiar with it. Just buying a tool or a platform is not enough. So yeah, it's a very tricky problem.
Well, one of the things you said there is companies expect people to go into the classroom and learn and take it back.
Yeah.
As somebody that does training, it's rare that happens. At least for a lot of the trainings that I do.
Well, can you explain?
Well, sure. People bring in their laptops and they're doing other work. They may look through the slides every once in a while, but it's like, oh, I'm too busy to. It's like my boss sent me here, but I've got other things I've got to get done.
But that might be, and this is not a complaint to you, Darin. That might be also that sometimes they're not. What is presented to them may not be enough engaging enough or interesting enough, or maybe the topic.
That's okay.
No, not you. But maybe the topic is not actually tailored for their needs. There can be many different reasons why that happens, and it doesn't have to be you.
Maybe I can deconstruct it in two ways. One is definitely I think our workshops are just actually fun, and I do have an overview when I'm delivering them, and I can see that the people are actually going through it. I went through a few of these workshops, not necessarily Kubernetes, and I think I got very frustrated. I was thinking, why is this the situation? Because there's slides out there, there's like commands, maybe you download this weird zip file to go through the exercises. It's just not a pleasant experience, and you can't blame the people for like being stuck and then just saying, oh, I'm gonna do something else. And the second thing is like companies do want them to be into, so they, like a lot of companies are asking us, if I buy this platform, can I, like, they don't care about the content, they care, how do I see that the people are actually consuming it? This is their main concern, right?
Just to see if they're actually getting value for their money.
Yeah, because as I said, most people, like, they don't like to learn. I mean, I like to learn when I have something in mind to build with it and when I need it. I'm not gonna go and read about Scala if I know I'm not gonna use it, right?
What is your hating on Scala right now?
Oh, I'm sorry. My best man is a Scala developer, and I'm actually trying to say Scala so I don't say Java, because that would be hating on Java or something. So I'm saying something cool in Scala.
Oh, okay. So in today, so you started out initially with DigitalOcean.
Yeah. How are
you platforming it today? If you can talk about some of the secret sauce. If you can't, that's cool too.
I can. It's super cool. Started off in DigitalOcean. We wrote a blog post about it. It's very ridiculous when I look back on it. So I was just basically fixing the images and creating live snapshots of them, and then using them to spin up clusters on demand. It was a small Go program that used to just provision the images out there, and we built a custom small load balancer to route traffic to it. It was failing a lot. I remember on the Hacker News launch, I forgot to increase the number of possible open file descriptors, which just means that nobody saw anything. It was just very bad. And like I'm a huge Kubernetes fan right now because of this process that we went through it. Because first we built a system that actually used this Vertlet plugin that allows you to run virtual machines as pods, which was working awesome. And it's surprisingly, I don't know, it was just awesome. But now then we dug more into Kubernetes internals, and now we have a big Kubernetes cluster we have both deployed on GKE and AWS and Azure within maybe a week or so. So we just need a Kubernetes cluster, and then we are having these massive pools of worker and master nodes that get assembled on demand. And you can actually see it when you do kubectl get nodes immediately. As you join a cluster, you can see them patching together. So we could not have done this. Basically, we have two backend guys working on it. We could not have done this without Kubernetes. Just imagining, and every time I'm doing the workshop or delivering something, I'm trying to say, imagine what just this small thing that we're doing right now, what would it take without Kubernetes? Like exposing it through a load balancer service or doing a rolling update, rolling it back. Just it's crazy. So yeah, relying heavily on Kubernetes mechanisms to deliver this.
So where is the mothership? Where is it living right now? Because you have a Kubernetes cluster that is controlling all the others, right?
No, we have
no.
Yeah, we have a very like our API is literally a request cluster. This is our API, so we can point it to any of our clusters, and we have internal operators that are dealing with everything. So it's been awesome. One thing that I really wanted to do, and I think it's been a great decision, is we're keeping everything kind of modular. There's not a single database in the whole MSB backend. We're using Firebase for basic bookkeeping, but that just allows us to be creative with solutions, because as soon as you have a database, you start building around it, around schema, and that's not a good thing.
It's a bad idea usually.
Yeah.
So you've taken this into companies. Do you do it live? Do you do it remote? Do you do both?
Which is kind of now actually the topic of our this episode. I was supposed to be in the US right now, delivering these workshops. We like to do it live, but obviously because of the travel ban and everything, we shifted to remote, and it's been working great. It's been actually like, obviously it's a horrible situation, but in the world, what's happening right now, but companies are contacting us and seeing like we have all of our workforce at home. Most of them don't even have the processes to be productive in this kind of environment, and they're kind of on a cold standby, and we might as well, use it for something good. So we've been delivering a lot of these workshops remotely, and it's been going great. And we can see more and more people logging in because of this kind of environment, and because people need to learn, and they're stuck at home.
Yeah. So, as someone who's delivered remote training before, live training is definitely easier. Because you can see people's eyes, they can raise their hands a little bit easier. What kind of pains have you seen when you've been delivering via remote? What's that felt like? What's been the biggest hump for you to get over?
Keeping people engaged.
Yeah.
As you said, you can look at them, like if somebody's chatting, then I look pretty serious. I'm a large Croatian dude, so you can look at them a bit angry, and then they chill a bit.
See, I can't do that to people. It's like I'm an old guy. I have a 27-year-old daughter. I'm like a teddy bear, so it doesn't influence.
Yeah, I have a 3-month daughter, so yeah, it made me a bit softer, definitely. Let's see how that goes.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's definitely a lot more questions that are necessary there, and what we need is always another person there, another trainer. A lot of people are afraid. A lot of people are afraid of interrupting. So we have another kind of Slack channel to talk directly to this trainer. We have a way for us admins to jump into their cluster and fix if something needs immediately. I mean, a lot of preparation goes into that.
Right.
The biggest problem is always if people get stuck and you don't give them an opportunity to catch up, then they're gone for the whole session, right? So even our content is like there's checkpoints that you can just go to if you're stuck, and just go to the next content. Constantly asking, are there any questions? Is it going well? And I do have a view where I see people going through if they're stuck, so I can address them.
That's cool. So there's two things there, because I've got a remote training coming up. One of them is basically you've got a teaching assistant that's with you remotely, and they're the ones just trying to virtually run around the room. Yeah,
I mean, we do it usually when I do deliver the workshops anyway.
Yeah.
If they're a larger classroom, there's always a person there that you can just come and ask.
But then the second thing is you have a checkpoint that somebody could declare bankruptcy and just go straight to that starting point. was like, oh, I didn't get all the way through this lab, so I can just fast forward, click here, and that gets me into the state I need to be in, and then I can go forward from there.
It's not as elegant. It will be hopefully, but usually it's a git checkout tag, so this is the endpoint, or just a folder structure that you can continue from there. Because let's say in the workshop we deliver, maybe show it later. We develop a real e-commerce store. Here's a pod. It's a very shitty situation. It has a database and everything inside it. Let's expose it for a load balancer service. Let's separate database into a stateful set. Let's do this. And each of these things has like, okay, here's a checkpoint. Let's continue.
You're not using Pet Clinic, are you?
I have no idea what that is.
Okay, good. If you don't know what it is, it's better.
Okay.
Victor's laughing. He knows what Pet Clinic is. For the people
Yeah, it's
watching
used
live.
in half of the trainings used at Pet Clinic. Yeah,
it's an
what is
e-commerce
that?
thing. It's an e-commerce thing
it's
that
just-
spring that came out. Yeah,
We're using it's called Sailor, which is a Django e-commerce distribution.
it's probably the same thing. It's a variation on a theme, probably, but yeah.
I mean, you have to use, like we were thinking, let's do something cool, like, I don't know, some NASA data set or whatever.
Yeah.
But I mean, you have to decrease the mental load. Like they have to have a context of, it's an e-commerce store. I know how it works. I'm not going to complicate things. I'm going to focus on the Kubernetes concepts, right?
Right. That's good.
Could be that I'm wrong. I don't know. That's our approach.
That's a good idea. So you've got an e-com store, but then you're not teaching the e-com store. You're teaching the Kubernetes under the e-com store.
Yeah, and like it's a way of, we have this problem. We have multi-container pod, the database, and Django itself is in the same pod. What's the problem there? Okay, let's extract the database. Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's add a shared volume. Let's run migrations through a cron job. So this is the kind of approach that we're trying to do. Like a problem, let's see how Kubernetes solves it.
So how hard would it be for somebody to use the platform to create something similar for their product? Because I can imagine for many companies that would be interesting. I don't know. I'm not going to name names now, but kind of, I'm a vendor. I have a product X. Can I use this to create?
We definitely do get these questions, and we are going to start rolling out with one vendor very soon. For us, it's a matter, like we have ideas for using MSB as an interviewing sandbox. So basically just flipping this technology, like these task checks, and you have to actually solve these things. We have been asked by a lot of companies, can they put their own internal content and processes on MSB? So there's like a white label solution that you can use to onboard engineers. It's all coming there. What we've learned in this kind of startup journey is that you have to be laser focused on one thing. And for us now, it's education. And just through the process of educating people and interacting with companies, we're learning a lot about their pain points so we can build these other projects better. So with our development team and with the scope, if we started going after 5 different things, nothing would get done properly.
And if, for the people that are watching live, if you get any questions, go ahead and drop them in the comments box. We can try to answer some questions here. I should have said that a long time ago. So people have wanted to basically white label. Right now, you've said no because you need to focus. Or you've said no-ish.
No-ish.
Okay.
It's a business for a big enough opportunity. Yes, definitely.
You're willing to talk, but it's like, that's like, because if it works, and you see that it makes sense, especially if it's to work to be part of your core, then it makes sense.
From a business perspective, there's a lot about, kind of value capture there. If you're just a tool that somebody's paying you $50 per month to use, it
doesn't matter. Not really. It doesn't matter, but it doesn't matter. So if you weren't doing MSB right now, what would you be doing? There's a left field question. You have a 3-month-old, so I know what you'd be doing. You'd be changing diapers.
Yeah, I don't know. It's very hard for me. I've always had a massive list of ideas I'd like to do.
Yeah.
I think I tried working as a developer. I realized I've been a pretty bad employee, but I didn't realize it at that time because, people, I was always frustrated. Why can't I do marketing? Why can't I do whatever? But companies hire you, we need a backend developer. We need you to do this thing, right? I realize that now in hindsight. I would be probably doing some other startup. I don't know, but I really enjoy what I'm doing right now.
Okay. All right, so we haven't had any comments come in or questions come in. We're going to start wrapping up here for a second. So if you have any questions for any of us, go and get them in the comments now. If people wanted to work with Magic Sandbox, you said you were supposed to be here in the U.S. right now, right? So are you still doing that gig with the U.S. company remotely, or did you change that up?
There's several companies. One is being delayed a bit, simply for they figure out how do they work remotely. It's all happening, and things are good.
What's all right? So this is actually a question because I've run into this a lot when I do training. Do you typically say, okay, here's your minimum requirements for a student? You need just a single laptop, or you need a laptop with an external monitor. What is the best setup that you see for students in order to be successful in using MSB?
Remotely, definitely a big screen. In person, it was a bit of an issue until I showed it a bit. We now have a full ID deployed there, so you can switch easily behind them. In person, I usually have a large projector and a screen there, so people can follow along. It's good, but if you're self-paced or whatever, definitely a big screen is necessary. And the 13-inch MacBooks have been the bane of our existence because you always have to optimize for it, and there's so much to show there. And you're working on it on a big screen, it's all nice, and then you test it on a small screen, and then you're like, it's not good. So screen real estate is something that we are extremely mindful of constantly. Okay. But maybe you can tell me what kind of workshops you do and how do you do them?
Well, I mean, I try to. It's around the day job, and so usually, when we get into the labs, it's nice having a second screen to where you can put up the lab instructions on one screen, and then the UI you're working with on another screen. Again, it's where a 13-inch laptop is not going to cut it. It's just even a 15-inch doesn't cut it. Having those second screens, especially to where you can, sort of, okay, where are my fingers? To where you can you look on one side and then you read on the other, right? Or do and read. And yours, I could imagine, is even worse because but all of your reading is inside. It's all contextual. So you have multi-windows. Here, let's pull that back up for a second. I'm going to put you in, then we're going to get close to wrapping up here. I'm going to do that one. So take us through this again here real quick. So let's say I'm in this part of the...
let me try to find something. I didn't show off a lot of these things, but let me... it's not that we're only tasked. There's a lot of this content out there, and I don't know if people can see it really well. But let's just go through, there's a lot of these UI tricks here that we had to do a lot of things to get to work. But as you can see, we're now going through a YAML, and we're specifically highlighting things that are happening. I think this lesson might have something. Let me just try. kubectl. So we're now making a deployment. So another kind of contextual thing that we do is we can point at things as you're going through the content itself.
Right.
So I think it's, from the feedback we've got, it's been working really well. It's been a lot of these kind of tricks that seem obvious in hindsight, but a lot of trial and error when to see what works. I actually forgot what was the question.
Well, see, you fit right in because we never, and this is also an indicator that we're close to the end because we don't know what the original thing was to begin with.
Yeah.
The question was, like for me, it helps having multiple screens, but you have the content of the courses baked right in. You're walking people through each of these points.
This is the guided thing that we've been talking about.
Fully.
And
so you're fully self-contained. You don't need a second set of. You don't need a second screen for lab notes to follow because the lab notes are built in.
Yeah, and usually, let me try to go back. This is kind of what we do. I think this lesson has it. Let me just keep it there. So you see, MSB is checking whether you actually did what you were supposed to do. So here we see, hey, we're actually supposed to deploy this or put it into a specific context. So it's not like just people can click through it. So this is what I mean by it's been built specifically for Kubernetes. Like everything is just geared to making this as effective as possible.
Right. Okay. Double check comments one more time. No comments in. Is there anything else you want to show us inside MSB before we sort of wrap it up here?
I don't know. There's a lot of things like we have real load balancer services. So the trick we show in the beginning is you create a deployment, you create a load balancer service, and it gives you a real IP to access your system with. We have full. I mean, I'm talking now as a techie.
Yeah.
Persistent volume support, so you can do stateful set tests, things like that. So we're really trying to give you as close to a production system as possible.
Yeah.
And now the next steps are, obviously I see it, I have this view, but the big push we're doing now is this CI/CD pipeline that's coming in with the whole cluster. So we're going to be developing more content for that.
Cool. Victor, do you have any questions? You've sort of been the quiet one today. Usually I'm
Yeah, it
Usually
doesn't happen.
talking much more. Yeah.
It's weird. I'm gonna keep it weird. I don't know. No special.
We're not in Austin, so you can't keep it weird. It's Austin. Number one, it's a Texas thing. It's an Austin thing. All right, Mislav, cool. So if people wanted to get in touch with you, and they wanted, and you don't really care. I mean, yes, you do care about people, but if companies wanted to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to get in touch so you can help them out learn Kubernetes?
I was just funny. You don't really care about people. You want
we do care about people. Well, all right.
You want the B2B budgets.
It's a business. It's a business.
It's a business.
All right, so let's talk about the business part of it, and then we'll come back to the people part of it.
No, we just go to msb.com. I think we're testing out a very kind of minimal landing page right now. We're still trying to figure out the best messaging that's out there. We really want as much people to try us out as possible. A very interesting thing has been happening every time I show MSB. They're like, okay, how do I get access to it? They kind of assume it's locked out behind something, but it's not. Like you can just
Well, do you want to pull it up? Once you pull up the site on, like, just walk us through. If somebody wanted to come out to your site, and I'll go ahead and switch back over to just back to the screen. Why is that not working? There it goes. So just take us straight over to like your normal. You said it's MSB.com.
MSB.com.
Yeah.
Okay.
So just go to MSB.com. In fact, we had one comment asking about it. So here's what it is: we help you drive org-wide Kubernetes adoption in days. That's a good.
Cool.
That's good marketing right there. Yeah, that's a good show. I like that.
It's cool. So just just go log in here. You'll be at. Okay, obviously I'm logged in.
Yeah, you're already logged in, but.
Log in with Google or create like there's a login page and you just click to go to registration, sign up page, create an account, and you're in. So there's a large free tier just to play around with. Okay. What we actually see a lot of people is start up a random lesson and then do their own thing in it, which is awesome. Yeah. You can see now my CTO view of all the content that's being developed there. So just play around with it, see all the cool stuff in it. Either go to msb.com or learn.msb.com to go directly to the platform. And yeah, play around.
And you said there's a free tier.
Yeah, of course.
And then if you wanted to pay, you can pay.
Yeah.
If you want corporate deals, send us the PO, right?
Send us to me, Mislav at MSB.com, or just hi at MSB.com, or contact us on Twitter. It's
Oh, you are a .com, hi at MSB.com.
uh-huh.
That's always that's one of the tells, right? You have an hi at. That's a good startup. That's a good
It's a good startup. Yeah.
Okay. Well, cool. Mislav, thanks for hanging out with us today. It's probably a much longer episode than normal, but that's okay.
Awesome.
And for the people that watched us live today on YouTube, thanks for hanging out with us. This will be a bonus episode of DevOps Paradox. I have to look at my schedule to figure out when I can get it edited, but it'll be out within the week, just so Mislav, you can tell people about it too. But tell your friends. Go out to msb.com. You can sign up for a free level. It's a free account, and there's a free tier.
Yeah.
And if you want to buy more, you can buy more.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
Sure. It's as simple as it gets.
So it doesn't have to be a company. If you want to learn Kubernetes yourself, is that okay?
Yes, of course. Like, this is what we built it for. The idea behind MSB, the marketing one, not the marketing, what I want to do is replace the CS degree, basically. So the idea is you don't have to work at Uber to have this big stack. We will deploy you the whole Uber stack and let you mess around with it. Every technology is there. And what I really hope is going to happen in the future, distributed systems, CAP theorem, things like that, what make you, I think, a proper engineer. So yeah, see what we're building and contact us. We like talking to people.
A piece of paper doesn't make you an engineer. Doing makes you an engineer.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Thanks for hanging out, Mislav, Victor. Go back to sleep. Sorry to wake you up so early today. And for everybody listening right now on the podcast, thanks for listening to this special bonus episode of DevOps Paradox. For the people on the YouTube stream, be sure to check out our cool little thing that's getting ready to happen right now.